What is up, guys? Welcome to the Lay Down podcast. This is episode 13 already.
Jeez, we're getting up there.
And today we are going to do something that good friend of the podcast, Mitch Mullaney of the Bottom Line, did a couple days ago, which was he basically tier ranked the Super Bowl era quarterbacks, the greatest quarterbacks of the Super Bowl era.
Everything past
And
1963,
of course,
62,
1966.
66, my
Yeah.
bad.
And of course, me and Lenny disagreed with absolutely everything from Tom
Yep.
Brady being the GOAT to Cam Newton being in the Hall of Very Good. So
Yes.
we have to rank it ourselves. And so I'm going to share my screen real quick. If you have to bear 1 second of inception, just, make sure. By the way, of course, joined by my co-host Lenny B as always. Okay. So can you see it?
Yeah, we're good.
All right. So is it just,
It's
the
just the
tier
screen.
list?
It's just the tier
Okay.
list.
It's just my screen. Okay.
Yeah, okay.
So as you can see, I made this list. I've compiled PNG images for the most part of the greatest quarterbacks of the Super Bowl era. And then I have put that, and then we'll put them into 6 different tiers. So there's the Hall of Very Good tier. These are the guys that aren't quite Hall of Famers in our eyes. Now, they may get in because it seems like their Hall of Fame's more inclusive nowadays, but these are guys that weren't quite Hall of Famers, but were very, very, very good quarterbacks for their era
Players
and
that
had
should be
very good
like,
careers.
they're like, hey, they're a good player, obviously, just maybe not enshrined
Very
into
good,
like
even.
a Hall of
Not
Fame. Yeah,
just not
exactly.
quite.
We
The Hall of Fame
appreciate
tier
what they
kind of
did.
speaks for itself. These guys were Hall of Famers for their era and had some very good seasons, but didn't quite, they didn't quite stand out amongst as like the top guys of their era per se. The legendary tier right above that. These are the guys that you think of them when you think of the era. They just weren't quite at the top. These are like the after the top.
I
They're not.
think
They don't really have cases to be in the top 10 really.
I think what
But
separates Hall of Fame and legendary is like legendary is like there's a mythos to it. Like, oh my god, that guy was so good. Like, yeah, there's
also
like he did something like incredible that no one else can do. Like,
and
you know what I
also I
mean?
think legendary is like, yeah, they're slam dunk Hall of Famer. Hall of Fame is like, yeah, if you could make a somewhat argument that they're not a Hall of Famer and I'd listen. But the legendary guys, there's no argument.
Mhm.
Pantheon, these are the guys that either are just outside of the top 10 of all time or are in the top 10 fighting for the top 5. These are the greatest of the great. Mount Rushmore, these are the guys that aren't quite the GOAT, but it's 2 through 4 on the Mount
Mount
Rushmore.
Rushmore is like criticizing their career is like trying to find a
Majorly
needle in
nitpicking.
10 haystacks.
It's trying to find a freckle on Miss America, basically.
Exactly,
And
yes.
then greatest of all time tier, obviously greatest of all time. So, Lenny, are you
I
excited
wonder
for
who
this? I know as a Niner fan, you've had a couple legends that we'll see on the list. So,
I'm excited because there's a lot of quarterbacks that throughout NFL history people just don't talk about. I guess like because recency bias is a real thing ever since like ESPN era, right? And
right.
uh, I just like talking about these older quarterbacks because we just don't get an opportunity to talk about these older guys, even though they their impact on the sport, whatever. I'm just
Right.
excited for that.
Yeah, I agree. All right. Let's start off with the list, starting with
Big Ben.
Ben Roethlisberger. Of course, Ben Roethlisberger is one of the greatest of the era. He won 2 Super Bowls, did
Hmm.
not win a Super Bowl MVP,
Did
did
not.
not win an MVP. I don't think he was ever in the conversation for the best quarterback of a season, but he was definitely top 5 in not just one, but several seasons.
Hmm.
He is top 10 all time in touchdowns and passing yards. He, I don't think he ever had a losing season. Just off the top of my head, he made the
No,
playoffs a
I don't think he
ton.
did.
He,
No, I don't think he did.
he's a
No, I don't.
player that some people refer to him as disappointing because he was a very talented player and he didn't quite reach the heights of some of the other guys in his era. But I think given what he did statistically and from a winning perspective, and just how important he is to the Steeler franchise as a whole, and because he does have, like in 2008, that throw to Santonio Holmes will
Oh
be
man.
remembered forever throughout NFL
Yeah,
history.
that's just a
You,
top play in NFL history,
yeah,
period. I
and
mean,
he
let
made the
alone
throw
Steeler
there.
history. I mean, Super Bowl
So
history. Jeez.
he's not I think he's legendary. Is this fair?
I
Would you
think
put him in
when
the
I look at
legendary tier?
Big Ben, he's definitely a tier above Hall of Fame. I don't think he's like borderline. I think when I look at Big Ben, I'm like, he did something, he played a certain way that no other quarterback you could say played that way. And I think past Hall of Fame, you need to be that kind of caliber, right? You need to do something no one else ever did. Or, the way he eluded pressure, just the way he played was just different. And he was awesome. And
And he never
I,
had a
I
losing
think
season. He did never
I
have a
think
losing
the
season.
way I would describe Big Ben is he's kind of like the Shaq of the NFL, if you know what I mean.
Just
As
not
in, he
quite as
had
good.
no, it's not the same talent level, but it's the same term of they had this great physical, like all these great physical attributes, and they didn't necessarily go and be the best that they probably could have been, but they were still really good. So I don't
Yeah,
think
I
we
think
should
that's fair.
hold the he didn't do enough against him. We're just judging what he did, and I don't think it's enough for me to say Pantheon just because he
No.
never really was the guy in one regular season, right? He was never the MVP. He was never the like I want Big Ben over everyone else, and I think for me that means a lot. Especially even in a Super Bowl, he was never that guy, which
He never won Super Bowl MVP.
it it's a big deal. I think it's a big deal in terms of splitting hairs with these big guys, but I wouldn't hate Pantheon. I just don't think I look at Big Ben and I'm like, that guy is, there's never going to be another, like, I, I'm trying to explain it a certain way. It's never going to be
So with
someone as
Pantheon,
great as a,
these are guys that in 25, 30 years, we're still going to be talking about the Pantheon guys.
okay, yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, like Joe
Uh,
Montana, like you're
Ben
talking about him. Okay.
Roethlisberger, like we're not. I don't think he'll be forgotten necessarily, but we're not going to be having hour-long discussions unless you're an NFL nerd like we are about how great Ben Roethlisberger was. And again, he never even had an argument as the best quarterback in any season. He
No,
was top 5 a couple times, but I don't even know if, like he never won an MVP. I don't even remember when he got close to winning an MVP.
I don't think
So
he really did. I don't think there was ever a point where he
yeah,
did.
but Big
Also,
Ben, he's
keep in
100% a Hall of Famer. I think
yeah,
legendary. He's
keep
kind
in
of like
mind,
the
he went to
standard for
three
legendary.
three Super Bowls and won two of them, and had one of the most iconic catches of all time. Like, come on, I mean, and had that amazing Big Ben. Peyton Man, that freaking Jerome Bettis fumble where he tackled him, like just
The Nick
flat out.
Hardware play.
As a Peyton Manning guy, right? Now I am, but just an amazing play from him. I mean,
Yeah,
God, that's just an incredible play.
great
But
great
yeah,
situational awareness, especially from someone that was I think just in their second year at the
I know,
time.
right?
So
I mean, yeah.
all right, next up is a man that I played many times as a Falcons fan, and
Oh
I'm
boy,
not ashamed to say that I did not like Drew Brees for many years. But Drew Brees just retired last year. And, Lenny, I always thought for like kind of when Drew Brees was playing those last couple years, I thought because he started breaking those statistical records, he had become a little bit overrated in the all-time looks. But now I think it's swung in the other direction, and he
I
has
think
become somewhat underrated,
his last season tainted his legacy because people saw that he didn't have the arm strength anymore,
especially in
and
the
and
playoff game.
they correlated that with his entire career. Like, oh, is this how he always was? Which it's just not true. He's always had like a
But
good
Drew
arm,
Brees,
but yeah,
he was unlike Ben Roethlisberger. He was consistently at the top of he was consistently a top 3, top 5 quarterback. There was a period where you could argue that he was, the best in the league. Like the 2009 season, I look at as he was probably the best quarterback in the league, and I say this wearing a Peyton Manning jersey. If I were an MVP voter, I would have given it to Brees that year. I thought he was a little touch better. I'm sure he's happy with how that season ended. And Drew Brees in the 2009 playoffs beat Kurt Warner, Brett Favre and Peyton Manning to win that Super Bowl. It's the only run in history where a team beat uh, only Hall of Fame quarterbacks to win their Super Bowl, which is a funny stat, or future
Wow,
Hall
I
of
didn't even
Famers.
know that.
Yep. He retired. I don't think he retired, but he was second in passing yards and passing touchdowns. He also did get unlucky with MVP a couple times, as I said, 09. 2011, he was one of the greatest seasons ever. He broke the passing yard record. He threw 46 touchdowns. Aaron Rodgers was just somehow better that season. He didn't win quite as much as some of the other top guys did across NFL history. Like, I think his win percentage for his career was around 60, 62%. And just for reference, Peyton was about 70%. Brady is north of 75% for his career. So not that does ding him, but he was playing with some of the worst defenses of all time during those stretches where he wasn't winning. And I would say that last game does taint his legacy a bit, just because of how bad he was. People just think he couldn't throw the deep ball.
Like at
Watch
all,
the
which is stupid. But
watch the first 15 years of his career, he could throw the deep ball. So Drew Brees, he led the league in yards a bunch of times. He led the league in touchdowns. He had great efficiency on top of great volume. He's a pantheon guy, right? Like, I don't think this is an argument. He's one of the 10 greatest quarterbacks ever. And even as a Falcons fan, you got to give him the respect. He is also the greatest free agent signing ever. I don't even think
oh
you can
yeah,
debate that. And yeah.
I mean, funny enough, Peyton Manning again. I guess the Broncos signing Peyton Manning is the second one I would argue, or even Tom Brady a couple years ago, just because of the impact, the short-term impact. But yeah, no, for sure. I don't really have a lot to add. I just think Drew Brees was so consistent every single game. You knew exactly what you're getting from him, and it's so hard to find quarterbacks who can do that. I just think it's incredibly hard to find a quarterback who's consistently, every game is going to be at worst like 200 yards, a touchdown, and maybe like an interception. You know what I mean? It's hard
Yeah.
to find
Yeah.
that. And Drew Brees, awesome player. I don't really have a lot to say that you haven't said, but I thought I'd mention that.
I don't think you can argue he's Mount Rushmore just because, like, the accolades, like one Super Bowl, no MVPs in like 20 years. You're fighting a really tough uphill battle there, and he was kind of outshined by a couple of the guys in his era, but he's like safely pantheon, I would say. So Len Dawson, this is one of the first quarterbacks to ever play in the Super Bowl era, one of the first great ones. And he is an interesting one because he really did save the NFL in a lot of ways.
He did.
But just kind of, he was one of the first great quarterbacks there, and the Kansas City Chiefs made it to two of the first four Super Bowls, I want to say, and I think they
I think
won
that
one
sounds
of
right.
them. So, and Len Dawson was a part of that. I would be honest if I said I knew a ton about Len Dawson because I don't, but I have researched him, and he did put up good era adjusted statistics. I don't think he won an MVP. Maybe he did, but I don't think so. But he had a legendary career. He was a champion. Would you put him in Hall of Fame or legendary?
Um, I think he's somewhere in between, but
It's tough.
I think I want to give him the benefit of the doubt just because of his era. I would say the way I think about it is era. I think would give me the legendary. Like he was awesome for his era, but like if I'm going to lean the Hall of Fame route, I'd be like, well, statistics wise and just overall like
You know what?
accolades in that
I
sense.
think
I'm
for
not. I don't
what
know.
he did for the NFL, being one of the predominant faces in the first, early era of the Super Bowl era, I think I'm going to give him legendary. I think I'm going to do it.
I
I'm going to
think
be
that's
nice.
totally fair. I really do think it's somewhere in between, or maybe just either way. I mean, Len
He's
Dawson, man. Hank Stram. I always think about the matriculating down the field. He knew how to freaking work that offense, man. He was. I wouldn't say like a game manager in that way, but he was that kind of quarterback who just knew exactly what to do. Like he was just. I know I'm using like loose terms because I don't know 100% about him, but I
game
know for a
manager isn't a
fact
pejorative term, by the way.
I know for a fact back then that they they leaned on him a pretty good amount. But I don't know. I don't know a lot about him, but I know legendary is probably a good place to put him.
John Elway. This is a really
Ooh.
interesting one because I think a lot of people are conflicted with John Elway. I think there's people that would put him on the Mount Rushmore just because, I think a lot of people watched John Elway that were alive for that era and were like, yeah, this guy's a Mount Rushmore talent. And I'm not going to dispute you there because he had one of the greatest arms in NFL history,
Mm-hmm.
maybe the greatest arm. And he did win 2 Super Bowls and he got to 5. And that's really impressive. So John Elway is certainly, I think, pantheon. What I think hurts him, though, is unlike Drew Brees, who he's also in a pantheon, John Elway's statistics aren't very impressive, even when you adjust for era. And part of that was, the teams he played on weren't always great. And part of that was he did play in a scheme that was more run oriented rather than kind of like a Walsh or a Coryell type scheme in that era that was more passing based. But you do have to dock him a bit for that. You can't just completely make
Mm-hmm.
excuses for his statistics not being up to par because when you look at the guys he played with, Dan Marino, Joe Montana, Steve Young, even like these guys all put up very good efficiency numbers, and Elway very rarely ever did. And you could also say that while he didn't get carried, he wasn't the main factor in his 2 Super Bowl wins. That was Terrell Davis.
Terrell
Uh,
Davis, man.
so
Cool.
I
Cool guy.
don't I think he's would you put him in Mount Rushmore? I would put him above Drew Brees just because I think the playoff success is there. He did win an MVP, even if I don't think he deserved
I
it.
have a
He did
question
win
about
it.
Mount Rushmore. Is it going to be 4 quarterbacks, or can I just put players I think should be in a tier above Pantheon?
Uh, so the greatest of all time is just one guy, and Mount
No, no,
Rushmore
no.
is the next three. So just
The
three.
next three? Okay. Uh, in terms of top five, I don't think he's top five all time. But I do think John Elway was just, I think he's similar to Josh Allen in terms of, you look at this year, Josh Allen's stats, you're not like, wow, compared to other players, right?
That's a
But
good
if you
comparison,
watch the
actually. Yeah.
tape, if you watch the tape and you watch just generally how good their team is for like in terms of weapons and all that, and you're just like amazed. And whether or not you want someone to win a game or not doesn't 100% lean on stats, but stats are a good way to show us exactly how exactly like the good way to measure it. So I think it's somewhere in between like the stats and the film because when you watch
Yeah,
John
that's
Elway
how I've always
highlights,
been.
it's like man, this guy was a freaking stud. But I'm sure if you watched a regular like a whole season of him as a fan back then, it probably was a little consistent. But so if he was that consistent player though, and maybe if he got those supporting cast early in his career, like he did with Mike Shanahan later, I think we could totally be talking about him as even goat like territory. Honestly, he really
Right.
was just an awesome athlete and player. I think about when Don Elway the
And
helicopter
somebody
dive.
that's
I
iconic,
mean,
too.
freaking just iconic player for the league.
Legend.
Legend.
But he's not at the legendary tier because his career was too good, I think. So I think I would put him above Drew Brees all time. That's my opinion. But you could argue either way that that's a really close comparison. Dan Fouts is next.
I like
Dan
Dan Fouts.
Fouts, man, I think he's one of the most underrated quarterbacks in NFL history.
I feel bad
He
for Dan Fouts, man. I
he
like that
won. He
guy.
was named to I think 6 Pro Bowls and 2 All-Pro teams, and he got completely screwed because the year the kick everyone talks about, oh my god, the kicker Mark Mosley won MVP that one year. That was the year that Dan Marino or not Dan
Dan
Marino,
Fouts,
Dan
the other
Fouts,
Dan in the
Dan
'80s.
Fouts. That was he got screwed out of MVP that year,
He
man. He
totally
should have
did.
won
He totally did.
MVP. And I think had he won MVP, he would be respected a ton more. So yeah, I would put Dan Fouts in legendary, man. I think I'd put him below Dawson, but I would put
I
him
don't think
like
I'd agree, but I could see where you like where you think that because he was an awesome player, man. People don't talk about him just because the team success wasn't there, but I mean the AFC at the time was just it was the Raiders, the Steelers, and the Dolphins, and the Chargers were just kind of sitting there, and in the middle. He didn't have the chance, man. He didn't have a good chance. I
Right.
don't think. I don't think there was really ever a season where he had the best team outside of. I do believe 1977. They played the Raiders in a divisional game, and it was like whoever won this game was going to win the Super Bowl or something like that. I don't remember. It was something like that. And but my point is that he was stuck in a time where he was the fourth best quarterback and the fourth best uh, team in a stacked division. So or a stacked conference. So like he had a rocket arm, man. I mean, he could just sling it. He revolutionized the downfield passing game. He made it like a thing. Like before that, it was like run the ball, check down, run the ball,
Right.
check down, run the ball,
That Air
and
Coryell
and he
offense
made it
really changed football.
like Patrick Mahomes. You don't see that without Dan Fouts. So if we're talking about pure like that, I could totally see where you go legendary. But I just think the accolades aren't there enough for me personally for me to put legendary for Dan Fouts. But I do love Dan Fouts. I think he's an awesome player all time, man.
So you would put him in Hall of Fame?
I would, but I'm not like mad about it. I'm not gonna like fight you. I just think I just think there's arguments both ways, and personally, I fall on the other side.
So where should we put him? We'll
Just
put
put
him
it.
below. We'll put him. Let's see. So I'll leave him in legendary for now. But if it gets to the point where like, yeah, you can't. He's not. We'll come back to that at the end, and I'll make a decision.
Okay, that sounds fair.
All
We'll
right,
sit on it.
Joe
Yeah.
Montana,
Here, wait, give me a second. Oh.
the 49ers legend, Joe Montana. Joe
No, it's not.
Montana
Super Joe Montana. Super Joe Montana.
was the greatest quarterback of all time, like 10 years ago.
10 years ago.
Even like 5 years ago, people were still making arguments. You can't argue for him anymore because some guy named Brady came up. But Joe Montana, man, I think some people overrate Joe Montana and some people underrate Joe Montana. It's weird. Joe Montana, of course, he won 4 Super Bowls. He won 3 Super Bowl MVPs. He won 2 MVPs. I believe he should have won 3. I think the year Elway won, he should have won that MVP. You can argue for Jerry Rice too. He had, he had a great team around him, and I think that's the thing. When people just solely look at his ring count, 4 Super Bowls is extremely impressive, but those teams. I'm gonna make a video about the '84 team. That was arguably the greatest team ever. The '89 team, you can put that team in that kind of discussion too. And the other teams, I think '81 and '88, those teams were no slouch either. But this guy, he was consistently efficiency wise one of the best quarterbacks in the league. He has great accolades. I will say his total stats aren't too impressive because he didn't play for a super long amount of time, and he never really threw the ball a ton. But his efficiency stats were always there, so there's no reason to believe if he did, he would have failed. And he did have a couple playoff struggles. Like I think between the '84 Super Bowl and the '88 Super Bowl, those 3 seasons,
That
he
was a
was pretty
connection,
bad
I
in the
think.
playoffs.
For
But
me,
overall, man, this guy in the playoffs was second to none.
it,
Other than Tom
yeah.
Brady, he is by far the greatest playoff quarterback of all time. In Super Bowls, he is still the greatest quarterback of all time. He never threw an interception in the Super Bowl. He has like a 127 passer rating in the Super Bowl, which is off the charts, especially for his era. And I know his team was stacked, but when you look at some of those games when you needed a drive, and you specifically look at both Bengals Super Bowls, this guy
Both
delivered.
Bengals Super Bowls. Poor
This
Bengals,
guy
man.
delivered in the clutch. Outside of Tom Brady, I don't think there's a quarterback I'd rather have on a drive to win me a Super Bowl than I would Joe Montana. And he did have a great team, and you still can't condemn him for that, really, because he played well enough to win all those Super Bowls. So Joe Montana, he's no longer the greatest of all time, but he should not be forgotten and should not be disrespected. He is,
Oh
without a
yeah,
doubt, to
totally.
me, in this Mount Rushmore tier.
I mean, you kind of laid it out pretty well. About that 84 to 88 thing. that was a combination of to me, that just nasty Bears defense in the NFC and the nasty Giants defense in the NFC. It kind of made it tough for Joe Montana to have these like epic, awesome games in terms of like, just being the best player on the field, just because how good those defenses were. But
That's fair.
anyway, yeah, I don't really have a lot else to say. Joe Montana won freaking 4 Super Bowls.
Won your
Dude
team
was the
4 Super
goat.
Bowls, Lenny.
I know he won 4 Super Bowls. Like, let's just. I mean, that's all I have to say. I don't think you already explained everything. I don't need to explain
Yeah.
more.
Aaron
Oh,
Rodgers,
this
man.
is. I think we're gonna agree on this, but like, I don't think this is gonna be controversial.
So there's going to be people that think Aaron Rodgers should be in this tier.
There are people that think that.
There are going to be people who think Aaron Rodgers should be in this tier. And there
I,
are going to
I,
be people
yes.
who think Aaron Rodgers should be in this tier.
I
So
don't think he
it's
goes any
really
lower than
tough
that, but
with Aaron
yes.
Rodgers, man. So let's get to the good before we get to the bad. So Aaron Rodgers, for me, and I've always felt this way, I think he's the most talented quarterback of all time. From an
Yes.
arm strength perspective, from an accuracy perspective, the ability he had, especially earlier in his career, to evade pressure and make a throw on the run off platform. His arm strength is, he's thrown he threw 2 Hail Marys in the same game in a playoff game.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
that's just insane. That just tells you all you need to know about his arm strength. And it's not like, unlike John Elway, his statistics have been always great too,
Oh yeah.
especially from an efficiency perspective. If you're about that, his total yards haven't been great, but he is still top 10 all time in yards. He's top 5 all time in touchdowns. I think he's third all time in passer rating. I think because Mahomes and Watson just got eligible for it, they passed him. But he was first for a long time. He's led the league in passer rating for years now. His touchdown interception ratio is absolutely ridiculous.
It
It's
is pretty.
insane. I don't know if
It
it'll
is.
ever
Yeah.
get replicated again. He does have
You never
four
know,
MVP, he
but
does have
yes.
4 MVPs. His 2011 season is one of the greatest seasons of all time. And his 2010 Super Bowl run, he does have a Super Bowl. He does have a Super Bowl MVP. And his
Mhm.
2010 Super Bowl run was very good. Now, Aaron Rodgers, of course, first of all, I don't really like him as a guy. I think he's kind of out there,
we clowned him a
especially
couple
recently.
episodes ago.
Um, but the thing with him is he just, ever since that Super Bowl run, I think he's 7-9 in the playoffs. And you look at it, and there's been a lot of games that I don't think he's completely at fault for. But there are games where he has disappointed, and the Packers have consistently been a good team with Aaron
Mhm.
Rodgers. But ever since that Super Bowl, they just haven't seemed they haven't been able to get back, and he deserves some of the blame for that. You look at just this year, just watch the 49ers game this year. He looks like he was scared. He looks like he was just kind of checking the ball down. He was locking in on Devontae Adams. He didn't seem like he
Oh,
trusted
oh
anybody.
yes, yes, yes,
And
yes.
his team lost at home as the number 1 seed and Super Bowl favorite to
Oh
a
yes, yes, they
7-loss
did.
team.
They did.
And they scored 10 points. So it's tough for me, man, because I think statistically Aaron Rodgers is Mount Rushmore. And accolades wise, he's between Pantheon and Mount Rushmore. But his playoff legacy, unlike even Peyton Manning, where at least Peyton Manning, yes, he was always his best in the playoffs? No, but he still got to 4 Super Bowls. Aaron Rodgers has only gotten to 1. So
Uh,
Lenny, what would you put it? Would you put him in Pantheon or Mount Rushmore?
I think I have a good argument for this that just kind of summarizes what I feel about Aaron Rodgers. So when we look at stats, right? Stats are used to help us figure out how good a player is, and we only want to know how good a player is because we want to know how good they are, how the cap I'm trying to say the capability of them to win a game for you. And though Aaron Rodgers has some of the best stats of all time, which is undebatable, that I mean, like, it just efficiency wise, I mean, like, it's ridiculous. But I don't think those stats reflect his ability to win games. And what I mean by that is I don't know if he's
Yeah.
able to put this team on his shoulders the way a Mount Rushmore quarterback would do. See, like we're saying, we're splitting hairs here. We're splitting hairs because this is like the hardest thing to argue about. But like he just isn't. he doesn't have that like go
So
get
I
it
think
kind of attitude
he
or
just doesn't
whatever.
have that like that X factor to him that like you're going to win a game because you have Aaron Rodgers. The way the Patriots fan had with
Yes,
Tom Brady or Joe Montana or the 49ers did with Joe Montana. Like
I
that's kind
just
of what
think
it is. Now,
I
I
don't think the
think
stats
to
reflect it.
say
Yeah,
he doesn't always win is a little bit unfair because I think when he's been healthy, he's only missed the playoffs twice in the regular season. So
that's
he does
crazy.
typically win in the regular season. But I think where we see that exposed more is the playoffs against the better teams. And I think that's maybe why I've always put Aaron Rodgers a little bit ahead of Drew Brees, just outside of also having a couple more MVP or several more MVPs, and just overall think he's more talented. I do think when Rodgers has had bad defenses, he's been able to take them to the playoffs, but he's lost in those playoff games, whereas Brees hasn't been able to even make it. But I just like I don't know, man. I just
I
can't
can't
put
put
him
him in Mount
quite
Rushmore.
like.
Can't do
Does
it.
this look right, or does
No, it
this
does
look right?
not. That looks right to me.
I think he's at the top of Pantheon, but I would put him in Pantheon. That's where I would
All
put
right,
him.
who's next? Who we got?
Roger Staubach.
Staubach, the guy who served in
I've
the
got to go.
army
I've got to
for
do one thing real quick. I'll let you talk about Roger Staubach for 1 second.
Roger Staubach is a very interesting quarterback to me because the first, I think, first 3 or 4 seasons that he was drafted in, he didn't even play. He didn't even play because he got drafted to freaking, what was it, World War II or something? I don't remember exactly what the war was. I don't think it was World War II, but he got drafted. And when they talk about Roger Staubach, you obviously talk about how he played in a dynasty. He played with, all right, not a dynasty, but a really great run with the Cowboys, where they were consistently one of the best teams in the NFL with Tom Landry and all that. And he, at the end of the day, he was the commissioner. He was the guy who made it all run. He was the person who made sure Drew Pearson was making those absolutely clutch playoff catches. And for me, I don't think it's a coincidence that Roger Staubach is that those Cowboys teams were so good with Roger Staubach. I mean, he's I think his stats are actually pretty solid considering like his era too. I don't even think he has bad stats in that way either. I don't think there's really like a blemish for me to like be like, oh, that's really bad for Roger Staubach. It,
I think what it is,
I think
he didn't play too long because he was in the military.
exactly. I was just talking about that. How long was he out for though? I'm
A
two or
couple
four
of years,
years.
but I know he started. He didn't play as long as he could have.
But
But
yeah,
Roger Staubach, man, like he was the best quarterback of a decade. He was the quarterback of the
yes.
1970s. Don't give me Terry Bradshaw's Super Bowls. Roger Staubach made 5 and won 2, so it's not like he's lacking in that. And his efficiency stats for his era are absolutely phenomenal.
I know.
He never won an MVP, but he was like I went back and looked. He was robbed of 3. He should have won in 1971, 77, and 79.
People
Uh,
people
he
hated the
kind of
Cowboys even
carried
back then.
he kind of carried the Cowboys franchise to their first period of success in the 70s. Everyone remembers the 90s, but the
Tom
70s
Landry.
Cowboys were pretty damn successful too. I would put him in Pantheon, Lenny. I think he deserves to be in Pantheon, and I think if someone had him in their top 10, I wouldn't be mad.
You know what? I was just thinking about it. I was like edging on it, like because I talked myself into it a little bit when I was talking about it. Because I've always been like 11, 12 with him, but I don't know, man. It's hard to say for me, just because how good Tom Landry was as a coach, and just generally the team, the aura around it, and just his length. I mean, I don't think there's really that much to nitpick with him, which is a lot. I mean, considering I think the only thing keeping me is just the seasons he didn't play. So if I'm going to talk
That's
about
fair.
just who I think was the better quarterback, just period, who was the better quarterback, nothing to do with like whatever else, I'd probably put him in Pantheon. I probably would. So I guess for now I'll put him in Pantheon. That's where I'm sitting right now.
Johnny Unitas.
Can we just put him in Rushmore already? I mean, I don't need to talk about it. Or
um,
as
Before Joe Montana, Johnny Unitas was in this tier, right here.
He was.
He was really important to the NFL because he was the first the first truly legendary quarterback. He won, I think, 3 MVPs, I want to say, and he probably should have won another. He had absolutely ridiculous stats for his era. He won a Super Bowl. He won, I think, more championships before the Super Bowl era as well. And he won a lot of games at a pretty high rate. I obviously, because he played such a long time ago now, we don't remember a ton about him. But Johnny Unitas, man, I think he's Mount Rushmore. I think he's Mount Rushmore, and I think you can
I have to agree.
argue. I think you can argue him to be second all time. I do. I hold him in that high regard. He was so important to the NFL, and I do think that should be rewarded.
Yes. Johnny Unitas was the first. Okay, so there was a couple time periods in NFL history where they had a poster child. Jim Thorpe was the first one. Red Grange was another
Had
guy
to
who
get
was
that
that
in.
poster child. No, I know this is leading into what I'm saying, but all these little bumps and like these just amazing players is what capitalized. Like it made it a bigger sport. So like with these one players, it would make it a bigger sport. That's all I'm trying to say. And Johnny Unitas was what officially broke it into like entire America is on football. Johnny Unitas was that opening, the door opening, and especially that Joe Namath Super Bowl. Even though we're not talking about Joe Namath right now, but even though he lost, but still, it was against it was against Johnny Unitas. Like he lost. Like what? Like that was the thing. Like how did Johnny Unitas lose?
It
And
was such
he
a
was
huge upset because it was Johnny
exactly,
Unitas' team.
exactly. He was held in such high regard. I mean, like there's nothing to like argue in terms of like if he was bad. I don't think there's really a thing you can look at. Maybe era is the only thing, and he was great for his era. So like it's not
He was the
even.
best quarterback of his era by far.
Yeah, I know. I mean, you
So
could argue, oh, he was playing against plumbers or whatever, but like
just research
when
those
he's just
players.
when he's so much better than everyone else. I mean, like it's clearly not a fluke. It's clearly just he's better.
Yeah.
Like he's just awesome. I mean, yeah.
Were Bill Russell and Wilt Chamberlain overrated because they played against plumbers? No.
No,
So let's give Johnny
Maybe Bill
Unitas
Russell.
that kind of treatment.
Yeah,
All right, Russell Wilson is the next guy. Um, man, Russell Wilson's such a tough player to evaluate, isn't he?
it's
Um,
weird. You
so
usually
Russell
see.
Wilson's career is like one of the weirdest careers ever. So his first few years, he was really efficient and I think underrated. And he was key to those Seahawks teams that were very good. And he won a Super Bowl. He
Yes.
should have won another. He made it to a second. Um, he he won at a very high rate, but he wasn't being relied upon a ton. It was mostly Marshawn Lynch and especially the Legion of Boom.
The
But I
LOB.
think about 2015, that season, when he put up crazy numbers. I think he threw 35 touchdowns that season. He got some MVP buzz even in a season in which Cam Newton had one of the most iconic seasons ever. He did get some MVP buzz around. I remember that. He showed me he was a great player. And I've always thought Russell Wilson's been a great player, but he really showed me that season that he was. And as the Seahawks talent has gotten worse year by year, he's kept them relevant up until last season. And even then, he was just, I think, a game below 500 with a
Yeah.
bottom five
Wait,
NFL
no, it was
roster.
actually 2 games technically, but whatever, it doesn't
6 and
matter.
8, but yeah, it's a game below 500, 7-7's 500. So,
Oh no, you're right. Never mind.
but yeah, he's kept them relevant, and the playoff success. He has 9 playoff wins, I think, which I think is just as many as Drew Brees. He's made it to 2
That wouldn't
Super
surprise me.
Bowls, which Aaron Rodgers and Drew Brees have failed to do, and Dan Marino has failed to do. He made back-to-back Super Bowls, which I think just since 2000, the only other guys that can say that are Tom Brady and Patrick Mahomes. Not even Peyton Manning can say that. And it wasn't like he was playing in a weak conference either. Not for the years he made it. The Niners were a very respectable team. The Packers were a very
Nah, the
respectable team.
Niners. It's so tough.
Um, and his efficiency statistics are incredible. Now he was never the best quarterback in a season. Don't listen to the people saying,
Zero
"Oh,
MVP votes.
he,
Derek Carr
he
has more.
he's never deserved an MVP vote. He never deserved an MVP, but he's been a top five like 3 or 4 different times.
He's similar to Big Ben in the way he
So I
started
think
off
you
with
know what?
stacked
I think I
rosters.
would put him right beside Big Ben in the legendaries here, and maybe that's controversial because he's only played I think 10 years, but I think his career is very similar to Big Ben in terms of
I think by the
yeah
time we're done with Russell Wilson's career, I think he stays. We're going to talk about it like, oh, Big Ben and Russell Wilson, like very similar players. When you
yeah
talk about people who have played in a way that no one else has played, Russell Wilson is that guy. Uh, the way he matches efficiency with just his deep ball accuracy and his
one of the
just
greatest deep throws ever.
playmaking ability is just incredible. When we talk about, okay, so like I know we're not talking about Aaron Rodgers right now, but when we talk about Aaron Rodgers, for me, I'm like, okay, you have the efficiency and you're great, but you don't. I don't think you sling it enough. I think Russell Wilson is a good enough balance of both, and sometimes that play style doesn't lead to MVPs. Sometimes that play style doesn't lead to a year where you're 100% going to be consistent the whole way. But for me, I think it just it's boom or bust. But it's kind of, you know what I'm trying to say. It's hard to like
Yeah, I know what you're
articulate
trying to say.
because
His play style doesn't always lead to, he's going to win an MVP, but it's still
exactly,
impressive in how he does it.
exactly. That's what I'm trying to say. It's impressive as heck what he does, but it's not exactly a recipe for MVP because you're not when you go for a deep downfield like all the time, like Russell Wilson does, and scrambles as much as he does. It's not going to lead to the best bulk stats, I think.
I don't always think I think it's kind of similar to John Elway, in terms of just that's kind of what his scheme tells him to do too a bit. So I'm
That's
not going to
true.
completely kill him for that. So I think, yeah, Russell Wilson, we'll see what he does now in Denver because he's still in the prime of his career, I think, or at least,
I think so.
close to it, around it. He should be. So if
I
he
hope
adds,
so.
like, say he gets to a Super Bowl in Denver, maybe he wins an MVP, he can move up and up on the list. He's already approaching, like, or maybe he already is in the top 20, but he can get even higher. So Russell Wilson, I think, would you put him in legendary?
I think by the end of his career, I'd put him in legendary. I don't think he's played enough to justify it. I think I'd put him in Hall of Fame. I think a lot of it might just be my bias because I'm a Niners fan, and
And
he's
he's
just
17
absolutely
and 4 against you and beat you in
he
an
has
NFC
absolutely just
championship.
worked the Niners every single year. I mean, last year I thought we were gonna sweep him, and he beat us on like two of the most flukiest games I've ever seen. I don't care. I just personally am not
You're
like a
just putting him in
fan
a Hall of
that
Fame
way.
because you're a Niners fan, basically.
I do still think though the longevity isn't there in terms of like he wasn't the best guy on the team when they were great in that sense. Even though is that fair? Probably not.
That's fair, but he's been the best guy on the team, and it's not like he's still like he's still at least made the playoffs with a couple teams that probably shouldn't have made it.
Like I
That's my
said, I'm probably just biased because I hate Russell Wilson in terms of a player. He's an awesome dude off the field. Walter Payton, man of the year. I mean, yeah, he's a really cool guy, but still.
speaking to a guy, going from a guy
Yeah,
that
Steve
you hate
Young.
to you love, Steve Young, Joe
Oh yeah, good
Montana's
old lefty. Good old lefty.
replacement, I guess. A little bit of beef there. No, I'm just kidding. I know they're cool off the field. But
They didn't like
Steve
each other before.
Young, his efficiency stats for his era are absolutely out of this world.
I
Like
know.
touchdown
95,
interception
man.
ratio, completion percentage, passer rating, adjusted net yards per attempt, all that kind of stuff, out of this world. He led the Niners to the highest win-loss percentage of any team in the 1990s.
Oh
He
yeah.
sh- he won 2 MVPs. He should have won 3 in a row. He got robbed by Emmitt Smith in 1993 of MVP. Um, and his 1994 season, that season, is one of the greatest quarterback seasons ever. One of the most complete quarterback seasons ever. He
Mm-hmm.
got the monkey off his back in the playoffs that year, and
The
he had
famous
his
quote.
usual dominant efficiency that season. Um, so Steve Young for sure is a legend and a pantheon player, but why he's not, why Joe Montana and Steve Young will basically never ever be a debate is because even though the regular season win-loss percentages are very similar, and even though Joe Montana did have better teams, Steve Young consistently disappointed in the playoffs.
Yep, it's
Like,
true.
like, like, there's not even, you can't even make some excuses for him. The only excuses you can really make for him are that he was losing to the Packers a lot, who were very good, and the
And
Cowboys a
the
lot, who were very
Cowboys.
good.
Screw them
But
Cowboys, man.
like in those games specifically, he would play really poorly, like especially against the Packers. So, and until 1994, he never really got over that. If he had
Mhm.
another run like that, then I think I would put him higher. But for me, he's in the Pantheon tier safely, but he's not any higher than that safely. I would put him. I think I would put him above Staubach, but I don't think I'd put him above Rodgers, Elway, or Brees.
See this guy right here? This guy? Yeah. Best lefty quarterback. Best lefty quarterback of all time. But yeah, Steve
Yes.
Young,
Oh
man, the
yeah,
way
Steve
he,
Young also iconic for his mobility.
oh, I was about to talk about that, man. I mean, like I'm talking about, I've talked about it with a bunch of other quarterbacks now, but talk about a player that no one else ever does it like him. Another player, no one's ever done it like Steve Young. Just the way he runs is so unique, or way he used to run. Uh, he did this weird thing where it looked like he was just a super old dude, and he just kind of like stumbled his way to a first down, and it just worked. I don't know what happened. It just looked like the stupidest thing ever, but he could get first downs, man. Uh, like you said, efficiency, amazing. Deep ball, amazing. Arm strength, awesome. He was a project for most of his career. Tampa Bay really screwed up letting him go, but I think the big
Oh
question for
yeah.
him is like, what happens if he starts earlier? We'll never know. We'll never know, and we don't know if it was the right decision to stick with Montana. It probably was, considering they won 2 Super Bowls in that time span. But
You can't say you're disappointed in what you got from Steve Young.
exactly, no, exactly. But I'm just saying, like, we just don't know what would have been like if he had the 88 or 89 rosters. We just don't know. And even though he's a great player, he did disappoint in the playoffs. So I don't think you could put him higher in Mount Rushmore, even though I'd love to see him and Joe in Mount Rushmore.
All right, going from your guy to my guy, Matt Ryan.
We're skipping
Man,
Brett
Matt
Favre.
Ryan has been, I think, the greatest player of all time.
Uh,
I think
uh,
there's really
I
no
don't, I
debate.
don't, I don't know about that one.
No,
Maybe if he wins
he's
a Super Bowl
either
in
Hall of Fame or
2016.
Hall of Very Good. But I think with Matt Ryan, he's one of the most underrated quarterbacks of all time, and I've said it for years, and I'm going to continue to say it until he finally gets his damn respect. He's gotten a little bit more since he moved to the Colts, so I'm happy to see that. But still, that doesn't make up for the 14 years of
Narratives
just
change until when the team gets
blame
better.
he's gotten for the Falcons' failure. First of all, Matt Ryan is top 10 all time in passing yards. He is top 10 all time in passing touchdowns. And I know this era inflates that stuff, but it's still impressive to me.
Come
He
on,
won
he's
an
top 10 in
MVP
passing yards all time.
in
Come on.
2016. That was statistically one of the best quarterback efficiency years ever. 117 passer rating. Broke record for single season yards per attempt with 9.3. Also did not have a game under 7.9 that season, which is another record. Also broke the record for most touchdowns to different receivers. He is, I think, has the most passing yards through a quarterback's first 9 through 14 seasons, like most passing yards through 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, and 14 seasons ever. So he's broken a couple records. He passed every Falcons franchise record. Yeah, I'm
Okay,
not going
I'm
to
gonna have to
continue to go
stop
on
you
about
here.
Matt
Yeah,
Ryan.
exactly.
I made a
If
video
I don't
on
stop
him,
you,
on his Hall of Fame credentials. I would put him in Hall of Fame. I don't know how Lenny feels.
I feel the same way, honestly. Uh, I don't even think it's an argument. Barry McCockner, YouTuber, he brought this to my attention. This just this argument, like, it's not even an argument if he wins that Super Bowl that he's a Hall of Famer or not,
The
and that's
argument
really
then
insightful. I mean,
becomes, I don't even think it's an argument that he's first ballot after that.
no, I mean maybe
Super
that's
Bowl
arguable.
MVP and top 10 all time in yards and touchdowns. Like, there's not really much, and he would have won Super Bowl MVP too.
to judge his career off of something that was like out of his control at that point, I think personally it's just like stupid. I think it's stupid. I didn't I watched that. I made a whole freaking documentary about that stupid thing. But
Just watch the John Boy stock, and you'll know it wasn't his fault.
and I just can't like I just can't blame a player for one game he didn't even like really play a part in terms of losing the game. Like, I can't do that.
The
And
truth is, Lenny, like his performance was really good in the
I think
game.
all that
Like,
matters is the performance. It's like I mean, in terms of I think you would have won the game if stupid stuff didn't happen. So why am I gonna blame you for stupid stuff
and at
happening?
the end of the
I
day,
don't know.
look who he lost to: Brady and
Tom
Belichick.
Brady. They literally took the
Like,
greatest like Super Bowl performance or 2 quarters of a Super
it took
Bowl
the greatest
ever.
comeback ever from the greatest player ever to beat him, and it also took his team combusting.
Combusting. That's some
Um,
good vocabulary. But yeah, I don't think we need to talk about it that much because I need to stop you before you go on this huge
yeah, I'm
tirade
gonna go
about
on
it.
a
But
10-minute
yeah.
rant here, but next up, another guy is Matt Stafford from this
He's
era.
not Hall of Fame yet. I don't want to even like discuss him being in the Hall
So
of Fame.
Lenny
I
goes
just don't want
from
to hear
Matt
it.
Ryan's a Hall of Famer, it's not even a discussion, to Matt Stafford's Hall of Very Good, it's not even a discussion.
It's
Um,
not that it's like I don't even think he isn't capable of it or he could have been capable of
so
it.
yeah, okay, so
He
Matt
doesn't even have
Stafford.
more Pro Bowls than Derek Carr. He has one Pro Bowl. I'm
So
sorry.
Matt Stafford right now, like today, is Hall of Very Good.
I know that's what I'm
Today,
saying. I'm
he's not a
not
Hall of
saying
Fame.
like the future he can't be
Matt
that guy.
Stafford in 10 years from he's not going to play another 10 years in like
He's
six,
not,
five,
but
six
yeah,
years when he retires, and he is by then at least top 10 all time in yards, probably closer to top 5. Same thing for touchdowns, because we know he's gonna continue to put up big numbers with McVay and this Rams team that just keeps on going and going and
Allen
going.
Robinson,
Um, he had last year the best year of his career, I would say, and
I mean, he
he
did
just
win the
won a
Super
Super
Bowl.
Bowl. Now he didn't win a Super Bowl MVP, which stings him a touch, but he did win the Super Bowl, and you got to give him credit. And I don't think his playoff run is getting enough credit because he was super clutch for them whenever they needed him. You look at the,
Personally, just real quick about the Super Bowl MVP. I thought when I watched him, he had an argument for it, and whenever he needed to make the throw, he made the throw. So I'm not going to hold that against him.
yeah, he didn't play bad at all,
No, he didn't play
so
bad at
you
all.
can't blame him.
No,
So yeah, Matt Stafford he's also set a couple NFL records, and I think now with Matt Stafford, I kind like Mitch always has been, and I'll give Mitch credit, he got this one right. Mitch has always looked at him like this, but now I think it's kind of universally regarded that yeah, had he been on a better team, he would have won more than he did. And like if Matt Stafford had been on the Ravens for 12 years instead of the Lions, he probably would have won a lot more. And
probably.
now because we just saw him do it with the Rams in year one, let alone, I think that's universally accepted. So Matt
Yeah.
Stafford, right now, he doesn't have the accolades to be in the Hall of Fame, but he may get
Give it
there.
some time. Give it some time. We'll see.
Speaking of time, Patrick Mahomes. This is a tough one, man.
That is tough. He's only
Because
played 5 years now,
accolades
five,
wise, he's
6 years.
above Matt Ryan. He has just as
Yes.
many Pro Bowls in like a quarter of the years. He has as many All Pros and MVPs, and he has a Super Bowl, and he has a Super Bowl MVP. But the total stats are nowhere near, and like the longevity hasn't been there. But at
Mm-hmm.
his peak, 2018 through 2020, like that 3 year stretch is, you could put that up there with guys in this tier. So
Mm-hmm.
it's really tough because he's had the greatest start to a career ever. And I
Yes.
think even after somewhat of a down year this year, that's still true. Where would you put it, man? I'm all over the place. I don't know.
For me, I think he just has to be a Hall of Famer.
Okay.
Regardless of whether or not,
I'll let you make
like
that decision.
the way I think about it today, if he retired or he died or something happened, he just disappeared one day. I don't think there's a single reason anybody in the world wouldn't think he would get in the Hall of Fame eventually. Like that's just the way I think about it. I mean, like in the sense of that way, I don't think there's a chance that he doesn't make the Hall of Fame. And for Patrick Mahomes, I know I'm beating the dead horse here, but in terms of a player who's never done it like that, Mahomes, even just the way he's played recently, Brett Favre is probably the closest I would compare him to, but I guess the longevity is, it's a problem in terms of like, am I going to put
You
him
can't put him
higher?
above, I
But
don't think, Hall of Fame yet.
no, I don't think you can, just because this technically, I mean, like, I'm not going to say it is because it's not most likely, but he could fluke out or whatever, and he could like technically get injured or something, and we don't know. But for what he's done in the last 6 years, you have to put him in the Hall of Fame, in my opinion.
I will say I do think we overreacted after that Super Bowl because everyone was saying, "Oh, Mahomes is going to be the GOAT."
Oh
I
yeah,
don't think. I think
oh yeah.
Mahomes probably just gonna like if things go on track for him. Say he wins maybe 3 Super Bowls, 3 or 4 MVPs. He'll probably end up in the Pantheon tier. Maybe he's even edging towards the Mount Rushmore tier. We don't know, but I don't see him ever becoming the GOAT after the last 2 years. He just hasn't. He's had 2 opportunities to win a Super Bowl and he's failed both times. And one of the times was against the player that he's trying to catch. So
Yeah, he's never going to be the GOAT. I'm sorry. He lost to Tom Brady 2 times in the playoffs, AFC Championship game, and the Super Bowl. Even if he gets 7 Super Bowls, there's always going to be that guy like, but he did lose to Tom Brady 2 times. I mean,
oh,
like,
the only way he can somewhat reclaim it now
huge
is if the
10
Chiefs go to
rings.
the Super Bowl and the Bucks go to the Super Bowl and the Chiefs win and Mahomes outplays him.
That is true.
That's
I think
that's
that's a
the
fair
only way
point,
he
though.
can reclaim that
Speaking
chance.
of Brett Favre, we
Brett
got Brett
Favre.
Favre, Brett
Brett Favre.
Favre.
I know people don't like Brett Favre. Brett Favre's Pantheon. Let's not waste time here. I
So,
know you don't like him because he
yeah,
threw a ton of picks and his efficiency stats weren't great. This guy won 3 straight MVPs. He won
he's the
three
Iron Man. He is the
straight
Iron Man.
MVPs. His durability streak will never be broken ever. I don't think.
Manning got close, I think.
Did he play like 16 straight years without missing a game? It was
I do
something
believe
crazy.
that is the stats. 16, 17, something like that.
Brett Favre, man, 3 MVPs. He did go to a Super Bowl. He did go to 2 Super Bowls, actually. He won one of them.
He did.
96. That Packers
And then
team
he
was
choked that Vikings one, though.
the 90s. The 96 Packers, I do think, are one of the greatest teams ever, and Brett Favre was their best player.
Underrated
So
team.
I do think that he deserves a ton of credit for that. He retired as the all-time passing yard and touchdown leaders. His total stats are great. He's, I think, 4th in yards and touchdowns. I think he's tied for 2nd all-time in QB wins with Peyton, just behind Brady. And yeah, I think why Brett Favre, like let's think about it. So he wins his first MVP in 95. They lose in the NFC title game to Dallas. In 96, they win the Super Bowl. He wins Super Bowl MVP and regular season MVP. 97, he wins his 3rd straight MVP, ties with Barry Sanders, goes to the Super Bowl, loses to Denver. At that point in 1997, you could say outside of Joe Montana, he had been the best playoff quarterback ever. And you could say he has a chance to get into the Mount Rushmore. He did.
So I have
But I
something to
think
say
like
about
the
this.
last
Interesting
half of
thing.
his career wasn't great in terms of he was really inconsistent in the playoffs, or he had a lot of bad games, and he was inconsistent season to season. I think more than some of the
I
other
think
guys.
his teams gradually got worse too. I
His
don't think he
teams
got the
did,
same. He didn't get the same team support he did early.
but even in like 07, 09, when he had great teams and he had great regular seasons, that Giants NFC Championship game is a really bad look for him.
Yes,
But he's
that was a rough
Pantheon,
one.
right? Even as a Niners
Yes,
fan, you admit that?
yes. I would like to say this, and I know it might get some people angry that I have this opinion, but I think Patrick Mahomes is basically just Brett Favre with extra steps. I think it's going to be like play out the same. I know it's like a big
That's not
like
an insult, by the
assumption.
way.
It's not an insult. Brett Favre's an awesome quarter. He won 3 MVPs. He won a Super Bowl. I mean, I just feel like you have this amazing team success in the beginning, and you have this amazing like just team, and you win Super Bowl really early in your career, and then you start losing players. teams start figuring out based on your erratic behavior. They start figuring out how to exploit your weaknesses. Make sure you don't play like that all the time. And we're seeing that with Patrick Mahomes now. He's just had been on this like slow decline where he's still really up there, but he's not getting up. He's going down. And
Two
Brett
years
Favre was
ago,
the
he was
same
the clear
way.
top guy. Now it's not as clear.
And the same thing with Brett Favre. He was considered like, oh, this guy could be like the GOAT or something like that. Like something like
He was chasing
revolutionary.
Montana.
Exactly. And it didn't end up like that the rest of his career. And I think it's gonna be like the same with Patrick Mahomes. But it's still a great player, honestly. Dude, his deep ball, jeez, beautiful.
He's a great player.
He drew
So
up
fun
plays
to
in the
watch
dirt,
too,
man.
because he
Drew up
didn't
plays in
care.
the dirt.
Like this guy, he would throw it wherever.
He's like, coach is like, hey, throw it into the stands. He's like, all right.
He didn't care about the coach, man. He was his own coach.
No. He was his own coach. Cam Newton, no, this is divisive.
Cam Newton.
I love Cam Newton. I'm a Cam Newton
So,
fan.
I've been labeled as a guy that doesn't like Cam Newton, and I would be lying. I would be lying if I said it was the biggest Cam Newton guy. But I do think like he has an argument for the Hall of Fame just because of how great his rushing stats are.
I don't think he ever will because of his.
And he does have an MVP, which obviously holds a ton of weight. But he's like his quarterback. I think he's definitely the all-time leader in total quarterback rushing touchdowns. I don't think it's close. I don't know if even Lamar can catch that. His 2015 MVP season, I do think has been a little overrated by some due to how it's more iconic than it actually was great, but it still was great.
Dabbing.
I think he's Hall of Very good, just because I think it's unlikely he gets into the Hall of Fame because his passing stats aren't very good, and outside of 2015, like he didn't have a ton. He had good years, but I like it. Just his statistics in the other years just weren't there, especially in the passing category.
I don't know why I said Jim. That was weird. Cam Newton, not Jim Newton. Cam Newton probably won't get in just because passing yards in this era are very heavily valued at this moment. Like it's a very big thing to have passing yards and passing touchdowns. And the stigma in the media. Media people don't like Cam Newton. And it's sad because media people are the same people who vote for the Hall of Fame. So if we're talking about if he's going to make the Hall of Fame or not, I would probably say not. But he is a pretty textbook example of Hall of Very good. He had a big impact in the NFL, just maybe not a Hall of Famer.
I'll say that like his impact is Hall of Fame worthy. His career is not Hall of Fame worthy. I'll say that.
All right. I think we need to hurry up a little bit. We're going a little thin.
I know you got to go. Okay, Dan Marino. Never won a Super Bowl, Lenny, so he's got to be in the Hall of Very Good, man.
Yeah, according to Patriots fans,
no. He won an MVP. He had arguably the greatest season in '84. He should have won the next year. Your guy Marcus Allen robbed him. He made it to the Super Bowl where he had to play the 1984 49ers. We know how that went. But he did make it. The AFC was very tough between the Bills and the Broncos and all the teams there. He retired as the all-time yards and touchdowns leader. Great longevity. Was, super talented. I still think of any older quarterback, he translates best.
He was the Aaron Rodgers of his era.
Aaron Rodgers before
if you minus the personality, in my opinion.
And he never won a Super Bowl. But yeah.
And the Super Bowl. If he won 84.
Pantheon, right? He's like, it's safe, he's Pantheon.
Yes. I would consider him Mount Rushmore. I mean, a little bit of a hot take.
You would put him in Mount Rushmore?
I think so. I think I would.
So you would put him above Johnny Unitas or Joe Montana?
I think I'd put him over Johnny U. I know it's a little bit of a hot take. I know.
Okay, so I think I wouldn't. So I think
I think we can meet in the middle.
I'd move him above Aaron Rodgers just because you have this opinion.
We can meet on the middle on this.
Yeah, so I'll put him at the very top of Pantheon.
That's fair. I can meet on the middle on that.
Okay. So why would you put him in Mount Rushmore?
Oh, all right. He was just. I personally think Don Shula in this era was very overrated as a coach. As an offensive coach, he offered nothing to Dan Marino, in my opinion. There was nothing he really gave him. his run game was consistently bad. It just wasn't good. He had the most talented arm, I think, like just of a passer, like just pure passer. Like that's the thing, like pure passer. He is the best, and I don't think you can like really look at anything in his career and be like, man, he really choked that game. That was Dan Marino's fault. He lost that game. You can even say that with Tom Brady and Joe Montana and all these other quarterbacks. I don't really think there was a time I looked at Dan Marino in a playoff game and I'm like, man, Dan Marino lost that game. Like he
Maybe there
really
was like, I think there was one at the late end of his career where he
in
did.
1999 when he played the Jags. I don't think so. I don't think that should be considered.
There was one of those. I don't remember his entire playoff career, but Dan Marino,
Anyways, yeah,
legend,
legendary.
pantheon. Terry Bradshaw.
Bradshaw's
Ooh,
interesting.
he's the borderline between pantheon and legendary, isn't he? Man,
I think he's better than for me. I think he's better than Big Ben. I think he's leading the pack in legendary. I just can't put him in
I think
pantheon.
I'd put him in legendary too. I don't.
I can't.
This just
Can't.
doesn't look right to me.
It doesn't
I
look
think
right
there's
to me
too.
either.
I think after like putting him in pantheon would expand it. I think too much.
I think so too.
Um,
What Terry Bradshaw? Obviously, you look at his 4 Super Bowls and you're like, face value, you're like, man, this original TB12, like this guy's awesome. But some incredible rosters. He had Lynn Swan. He had what was that running back name? He freaking did the immaculate reception. God, Franco Harris.
Franco Harris, right?
Yes. They had Franco Harris. He had a great coach, and
Joe Green, insane defenses.
and it's I'm not gonna like hold it against him in terms of how good I think he is, but when you do look at how good he played outside of the playoffs, it's a little underwhelming. It's they didn't ask him to do a
I think
lot.
he only made like 3 Pro Bowls or something
Yeah,
like that.
he didn't really he wasn't like a poster child in terms of regular season like Aaron Rodgers, like where he's just putting up insane stats and carrying them into playoffs. No, it's kind of weird. He's like one of the only quarterbacks in NFL history to just absolutely turn it up in the playoffs and just be awesome in the playoffs.
Yeah, he's one
Whether
of
or
the few
not
that got better.
it's not normal. Like him and Joe Montana and Tom Brady are probably the only
I
ones
don't
I
even think
consider
Brady
that.
gets better. I just think he maintains.
That is fair. Anyway, it's just it's not it's too much. He doesn't have that like special, if you know what I
You
mean.
know what it is,
But
Lenny? I don't know if he ever had the season like where I could say
oh,
yeah.
I think that's a good point. And you never if you had that one All
So
Pro
like if
season
we
and
could
like
go through
yeah
it,
okay
Marino had 84, Rodgers had 11, Elway had a couple. One of the years he dragged the team to the Super Bowl was pretty special. Brees had 09 or 11. Favre had 96, Young had 94, and Staubach had. I think one of the years he should have won MVP. They also won the Super Bowl.
hmm
Bradshaw never had that. I don't think.
no he was though he was top half top five in the NFL as a quarterback. Um, for that era and just the lack of quarterback talent in general, I don't think you can like really look at that and be like, wow, compliment in terms of like we're splitting hairs, guys. I'm telling you, we're splitting hairs. You
He's
can't
legendary. He's
yeah.
just not pantheon.
Yeah, I don't think he's
Troy Aikman,
like
I think, is the same way too. I think he's basically the Bradshaw of the
similar, yeah,
'90s. He
similar
won a
thing.
lot. He was really clutch, and his statistics aren't as bad as people make out. Like he was very efficient. He just didn't have the volume stats really, partly because too, you know, they had Emmett Smith and they didn't really need to throw the ball, and that still wasn't a heavy passing era in the '90s.
This was still an era where you could run the ball and just run the ball a lot with that guy that you knew was just amazing and let your quarterback make the throws when he needed to.
But as a Niner fan, I'll
Yeah.
let you go on him because he played him a lot.
Troy Aikman is a very good quarterback and obviously an all-time great quarterback. I just think it's similar to Terry Bradshaw, where it's like, where's the difference maker? Like, what separates you? What separates Troy Aikman from Steve Young? I think it's just like the difference. The different. Like, wow, like look at that. You know what I mean? Like, that's incredible. Troy Aikman, that's pretty dang good. Which there's nothing wrong with being pretty dang good because you're still one of the best quarterbacks of all time. I'm just saying, I don't think he does anything particularly great in terms of all time status. Obviously, he was a great quarterback, and there wasn't really a lot of flaws in his game. And I just don't think there's anything you can grasp on like he did that great.
That's fair. Fran Tarkenton, this guy definitely
Fran
did something great, and that
Tarkenton,
was scrambling. He was.
yes.
I always called him the Steve Young before Steve Young.
Oh, I like that.
Because he lost a lot in the playoffs. People kind of considered him like a loser because he always lost in the playoffs. But he did go to the Super Bowl a couple times. Those Vikings teams were probably good enough to win a Super Bowl. I just don't know how they didn't because they're Vikings.
The Raiders beat him.
But Tarkenton had great efficiency stats for his era. I think he won one MVP. He has a very good regular season win-loss percentage, and yeah, he was pretty iconic too. He's definitely legendary. I don't think he's pantheon because I just don't think he's quite on that level.
Yeah.
Would you put him above eight? Would you put him at the top of legendary?
No, I wouldn't put him on the top of legendary. This is a different problem. With Terry Bradshaw and Troy Aikman, it's like, what's the difference maker? Well, with Frank Tarkenton, it was a scrambling ability, how just dynamic he was. And I think what Troy Aikman and Terry Bradshaw had was that when in the biggest moments, they were there.
Clutch.
They were there. And
Tarkenton kind of, no.
Frank, no. I don't, no. He just wasn't there. I think.
So would you put him above either of them?
I think I'd honestly have Big Ben over him if I'm being completely honest with you too.
All right.
But Russell Wilson I'd have lower just because
longevity.
Yeah, longevity. He hasn't played as long. Yeah.
Tarkenton and Wilson are also similar players.
Skirt Warner.
Kurt Warner, the grocery man who ended up winning MVPs and Super Bowls.
Yeah.
Kurt Warner, his peak is here. So it's this level. But his career is this level. I think that's how I see it.
Yes.
So Kurt Warner, 3-year stretch from 99 to 01. One of the greatest stretches in NFL history from a quarterback.
Seriously. The greatest show on turf, baby.
2 MVPs, a Super Bowl, and a Super Bowl MVP. And he probably should have won 2 Super Bowls. They were favored against the Patriots, just weren't able to win. Very close game.
Yeah, they were playing the best.
Then he had kind of like his career kind of went off the rails. It went downhill badly.
People forget about
Arizona.
That,
career renaissance. He faces a legendary defense in the 2008 Pittsburgh Steelers. He absolutely torches them, and he is subject to horror on the last play of the game, and it ends up not
Santonio
getting that second.
Yeah.
He loses to this man, but would you put him above this man?
Okay, number one, I don't think you can ever put an all-time quarterback over another all-time quarterback if they're similar, if they beat him in the Super Bowl. I just don't think that you just can't do it. Number two, I do think Kurt Warner is one of the most interesting case studies in NFL history just because of how off and on he was, man. I mean, he was like electric when he was on, but he was like you should go back to the grocery store at some points. You know what I mean? That's not normal.
From like 2002 to 2006, he was genuinely backup level.
I see it and kind of in like a Patrick Mahomes level, but with the longevity. If he played another 5-6 years, or not 5-6 years, but you know what I mean, like a longer. And
I don't see ever Mahomes being that bad.
No. I mean, like he had the accolades and all this, but like right now he hasn't. Like, but outside of a couple bulk seasons, he hasn't had like.
So you would put him. Where would you put him? He's legendary, I think. But
I think he's at the back end of legendary. Like maybe.
Would you put him above Russell Wilson?
I think Russell Wilson has the consistency. I'd probably put him over Dan Fouts though.
Okay, so you'd put him here?
Yeah.
Okay. Bart Starr.
Bart Starr, very interesting.
Mitch called him the Tom Brady before Tom Brady.
That was actually TB12 on the
Steelers. He's legendary too, man. If we're putting Len Dawson in legendary, then
they're
putting
like Bart, the same, I think. Len Dawson
but
and
Bart Starr just was
similar.
a winner. He was more of a winner than Len Dawson was.
That is true.
Len Dawson was very important to the NFL, But Bart Starr won an MVP. He won multiple NFL and Super
He won
Bowls.
4
He won,
championships in a row.
he that Packers dynasty in the 1960s was crazy, and he was a huge part
2
of that. He
NFL
was clutch,
championships, 2 Super
efficient,
Bowls.
did what he had to do, and he was a great leader. He is legendary. Where would you put him around here? Like, would you put him below
Below,
Fouts?
I got to put him above Fouts just because he has had that Super Bowls and he's just had all that.
Below
He's done all
Warner?
that. He's been there. Below Warner. I think that's where I
Okay.
put him. Yeah.
You got anything to say on Bart Starr or?
You kind of laid it out. Bart Starr, uh, I mean, you laid it out. Vince Lombardi, obviously, a very big impact on that team and just a revolutionary scheme. But I mean, it takes a special kind of quarterback to never even hear, to know what the heck you're talking about when it's never even been done before. I think is something people don't get. You know what I mean? People don't get that. Like he
Yeah,
was the operator of an offense that has never even existed up until that point. I mean, like that's pretty crazy to me.
Joe Theismann. This is a
Joe
tough one,
Theismann, the freaking pretty boy, man. People
man.
forget. People
He won
forget
an
about it.
MVP. He won a Super Bowl, and he won a Super Bowl MVP. But he barely played.
I'm going to say he is if Patrick Mahomes got injured last year or next year. That's why I
So would you
view
put
it.
him below Mahomes or slightly above?
I'd probably put him below. I think I'd view it the
But
same
you
way
would put him in a
though.
Hall of Fame.
Yeah, I put him in the Hall of Fame. Is he
Okay.
not in the Hall of Fame?
No,
Really?
I don't think so.
That's interesting. I think he probably should be, but whatever. What do I know? What do I know?
Yeah, if he would definitely be in it if he had played like a couple more years. I don't know. I think he may even get in eventually,
He
but
changed his name to Theismann and
because of
changed his
Heisman.
because of Heisman. Heisman, what a legend, man! I
That's
mean,
Hall of
God,
Fame worthy in
that's
itself.
Hall of Fame worthy, man. Put him in.
Philip Rivers. God, this is
Ooh,
another
I feel
tough
bad for Philip Rivers. I can't put him
one.
in the Hall of Fame. I just I can't do it because he's had opportunities. He's had it. He's just had it. And I've seen it. It's just like he was just never good enough. And when you're
Man,
never good
you
enough,
know
I
what?
don't
I
think
with
you're Hall of
as
Fame.
time has gone on since his retirement last season, people have forgot. Like people just think of Philip Rivers as this stat compiler that was never very. He was never one of the better. He was never one of the best quarterbacks. He was just always kind
That's
of
just
pretty good.
wrong. That's just wrong if anyone
So
thinks
so
that.
I'll put it to you like this: 2008, 2009, 2010. That 3 year
Mm-hmm.
window. You could make a
Mm-hmm.
legitimate argument through that 3 year window when Philip Rivers was in each season a top five quarterback. Like there's no argue, you can't even argue against that.
Yep.
You could make a legitimate argument cumulatively through that 3 year stretch. He might have been the best quarterback in the league. It was him or Peyton Manning in that stretch. And
He beat him one
statistically,
time too. He
in
beat him in the playoffs.
2000, yeah, he beat him twice actually, '07 and '08.
That's true. He
Uh,
did.
he was very good in that stretch. That was a pretty high peak. He he then like the talent on his team really declines after the 2007 season, I would say.
Yeah.
And he didn't win a ton, but he did like 5 playoff wins isn't terrible. I think
No,
we see
I don't think
Brady
it's
with
terrible.
35 and we're like, "Oh, that sucks." I don't think that's horrible.
That
Especially
sucks.
considering he shared a conference with Brady and Manning and Ben.
It is very. You need to keep in mind the conference he was playing in and the teams that he had. He
Like the
wasn't Peyton
teams he
Manning,
had
guys.
past like '07, I'm telling you, they weren't great. They were not great.
Uh, when you're not Peyton Manning and you don't have rosters like Brady, you're kind of stuck in the middle. Okay, so this is the way I see it. Hall of Fame to me is honoring players that were that guy. I just don't think Philip Rivers was that guy. It's like I
I'm
try to
gonna and
articulate
I
it a
love
certain
Matt
way.
Ryan, but if we're putting Matt Ryan in the Hall of Fame, and I understand he has an MVP, and I understand he's a better playoff performer, I think it'd be disrespectful to put Matt Ryan in there, and then look at Philip Rivers, see that their career stats are basically basically identical. Rivers is a little bit ahead of him
I feel
because of
like he's had
longevity.
worse teams, to be fair, too.
That's
Not
fair. That's
wrong.
fair. But their efficiency is basically identical. Rivers has 8 Pro Bowls to Ryan's 4. Ryan does have the MVP and All Pros over him. And
Fair
their
enough.
the win loss percentage favors Rivers in both the regular season
The
and
way
playoffs.
I would explain that is that Matt Ryan, to me, was that guy. He just very rarely got the opportunity to show that he was in the big stage, you know? And when he did, these team often put him in bad situations. But with Phillip Rivers, for me, he had those chances. They were there. He just never did
But
it.
but when he didn't do it, it was usually to Brady. And
I
the
mean,
only
like,
year he really should have beaten him
I'll meet
was
you in the
his
middle
first.
here, and I'll say he's the worst in the Hall of Fame
Okay,
category.
again, this is the Philip Rivers conundrum. Awful in the playoffs, at least reputationally wise, and great in the regular season. That's
All
what
right,
he is.
so I gotta go, but do the rest of the list for me. Put Ken Stabler and GOAT for me.
All right,
Well, how about we
all
do
right,
Ken
Lenny.
Stabler? How about I just do Ken Stabler real quick? I'll give
Okay,
my take
talk
on
about Ken
Ken because
Stabler.
Ken Stabler, man, typical Raider, the Raider, man. I mean, he was just he was hungover and threw for like 300 yards and just the one thing with him was that in the playoffs he would always get stumped out by the Steelers and maybe you would look at his stats and you're like, regular season you're not not great. He did win MVP. He was awesome that season and he just he was a winner, man. In the regular season, him and John Madden were arguably no one talks about this, but arguably the greatest head coach quarterback duo of all time. Like I know that's like no one's that's weird, might be weird to say, but if you think about it, how much winning they did in that short a period of time and how good Stabler was in because of Madden and because of what they did with Cliff Branch and Fred Blitnikoff, I have to put him in legendary. And I think I'd put him over Russell Wilson, maybe Frank Tarkenton. I think I'd put him right around there in legendary. Maybe I'm overshooting it. Uh, I don't know. I think that's where I'd put him though.
All right,
All right.
you put him right here, like right
I
between.
would. I might be overselling him a little bit, but I personally I just love Ken Stabler. I mean,
Okay, that's fair. Ken Stabler is a legend.
all right.
All right, Lenny. Enjoy wherever you're going to. We'll see you
Peyton Manning better be in GOAT tier. I'm
next
gonna be
time.
mad.
He will be. Don't worry. I won't let you down. All right. Joe Namath is the next guy. This guy guaranteed that he would win a Super Bowl, and then he actually did it. Now, he only scored 16 points in that game. You do have to factor that in. He also, you know, he didn't have great interception numbers, but he was a passing yards leader. He was the first ever guy to throw for 4,000 yards, I believe. And he's really iconic, man. Like he's really iconic with his attitude and what he did for the game as well. I think is very impressive. So I I think I would definitely put him in the Hall of Fame. I think I put him at the top of the Hall of Fame. I think I would. I think I would. And I think I used the wrong Joe Theismann pick here. But we'll go with Sonny Jurgensen next. Sonny Jurgensen never won an MVP, but he should have. I think it was a year in the 60s where he didn't win an MVP, but he should have. He is a champion, and he was a passing yards leader. I don't know a ton about Sonny Jurgensen, I'll be honest, because he played a while ago now. But I would put him in the legendary category. I really would. I think he belongs there, and just for what he did for the NFL as well, being one of the first great quarterbacks of the early era of the Super Bowl era, and overall just having a very successful career, I would put him in there. Bob Greasy is next. Bob Greasy, man, tough one. I think I'd put him here in Hall of Fame. He had decent statistics. His statistics weren't great even for his era. He was a winner though. He was a part of that 72 Miami team with Earl Morrall. They split time, but he did win. He won Super Bowls. He had solid statistics. He was kind of the perfect game manager for what he was asked to do. And manager is used in a pejorative manner. It's not. It's not an insult. He just, for me, I don't know. I don't think I can put him in legendary just because he was never the driving force to his team's success. But he was, consistently a very good quarterback, and he was a winner. So I think I'd put him in the Hall of Fame tier. I know he's in the Hall of Fame, so I think he belongs in there. Next up is Ken Anderson. This guy's another interesting one. Ken Anderson. I would put Ken Anderson. He's not in the Hall of Fame. His efficiency stats were very good, but he's not. That was also with Bill Walsh, so you got to factor that in. Man, he did make a Super Bowl. He did win an MVP. He's very similar. You know what? I think I'd put him. He was kind of also a guy that can kind of say he was an innovator with how he did offense. So yeah, I think I would put Ken Anderson. I know he's not in the Hall of Fame. I think I'd put Ken Anderson right here. He was kind of like the Matt Ryan of his era in terms of his teams were never great, so he didn't have a ton of playoff success, but he played fairly well when he got there. He also was very good statistically, both total-wise and efficiency, especially wise. And he was just never really one of the top guys, I don't think, outside of a couple seasons like 1981. So that's where I would put Ken Anderson. I think he's a Hall of Famer. I really do. Eli Manning. He's next. Eli Manning. This is an interesting one. Eli Manning is... I don't think he's a Hall of Famer. That's the thing. But he won 2 Super Bowls, so it's tough, and he's top 10 in yards and touchdowns. Here's the thing, though, and I've seen most of Eli Manning's career. Eli Manning was not considered an elite quarterback or even a very good quarterback in any season other than 2011. 2011, Eli Manning is that's his masterpiece. That's the year that Eli defenders can go back to and have fun with because he was great that season. That playoff run especially, like he beat the Falcons. I remember he beat Matt Ryan, who we have in the Hall of Fame tier. He beat Aaron Rodgers, who's of course in the Pantheon tier, and he beat Tom Brady, who I'll let you guess what tier he'll be in. So he beat Tom Brady twice in Super Bowls. Obviously, that deserves respect, but those were both defensive games. He was very lucky to get to both of them. If Kyle Williams hadn't fumbled on the kickoff return in 2011 NFC Championship, that overtime, if he had not fumbled, then the Giants don't make that. We don't know if the Giants make that Super Bowl or not. And in 2007, Brett Favre basically gift wrapped him that Super Bowl appearance. He didn't do a ton in that game either. He didn't do a ton in 07, period. He just wasn't that good in 07. So his efficiency was never great. His yardage totals were fairly impressive. But again, I just feel like, unlike Matt Ryan or Phillip Rivers, he was kind of a product of longevity in terms of he just never was elite. He's basically, to me, Vinny Testaverde with a clutch gene and rings. That's what he is to me. And Vinny Testaverde's not on this list. But he had interception problems. He was super inconsistent week to week. So I'd put him in. I think he's Hall of very good, man. I just don't. He was never, I don't even think, a top 10 quarterback outside of maybe another season other than 2011, where he was top 5. And even his playoff career, man, he only won playoff games in 2 seasons, that being 2007 and 11. And Matt Ryan and Phillip Rivers, who have been labeled chokers, while Eli's labeled as this clutch demigod, won playoff games in more seasons than Eli Manning did. Now, Eli Manning, of course, you can't tell the story of the NFL without Eli Manning, but as his career was not I don't see Eli Manning as a Hall of Fame quarterback. I just don't. I don't, man. I don't. Giants fans can come at me. but I don't. John Hadel. John Hadel. Don't know a ton about him either off the top of my head, but I know he was an AFL legend. He did some good stuff in the NFL. Had a fairly long career. He's a Hall of Famer. He's a Hall of Famer. So, John Hadel. I'm not going to spend too much time on him, but he's certainly to me a Hall of Famer. So, Donovan McNabb. Donovan McNabb. He's kind of the spitting image of what a Hall of Very Good quarterback is. Donovan McNabb, to me, had a couple like 2004. I think that's his masterpiece in terms of that season outside of Peyton Manning, who just ran away with the MVP. Like that was probably he was probably the second or third best quarterback with Tom Brady that season. His from like 02 to 06, he was really good. He was in the weird era where impressive as a talent. I think he's a really good talent. But I don't think he had a Hall of Fame career. I think he had a very good career. His career is kind of a worse version of what Philip Rivers' career was, and I think that's Hall of Very Good. Tony Romo, basically the same thing. I give Romo the edge over McNabb. I understand McNabb has, I think, 9 playoff wins compared to Romo's 2, I want to say. 2 or 3, something like that. But Tony Romo, man, I think this guy's one of the most underrated quarterbacks of all time. He is labeled as just this quarterback that wasn't that great when he was good. He was very good for many years. He had a couple of years, like I know 07, 09 was a good year for Romo. 2014 was a really good year for Romo. He had a couple MVP, like he got a little bit of MVP buzz in some of his seasons. His teams were never great until like 014 was a great team, but other than 07 and 14, teams were never very, the teams were never really great. He was very efficient. He had a very high completion percentage, very good passer rating, yards and touchdowns, not as impressive, but still fairly impressive. So Tony Romo, for me, like his offensive line got him injured several times, and that shortened his career. Otherwise, who knows, he may even have retired later than he did. And I think Tony Romo was a very good NFL quarterback, just like Donovan McNabb. I just don't think he has the accolades to be a Hall of Famer. He has maybe the efficiency statistics, but he doesn't have the accolades. Randall Cunningham, I think it's tough because he never won an MVP. But he had two. He had the 1990 where he finished, I think, second to Montana, and 98 where he was in the running, but Terrell Davis won it. So he was when he was with the Eagles, he was with an offense that really prioritized running rather than passing, and so his passing stats were, kind of expectedly down. But he also was, not a great. He was a lot like Cam Newton was. Just I think he ran differently. He ran more with speed than power. But he went to Minnesota. He was very good for a couple of years in the early 90s. Then he had a lull for a bit. Then he goes to Minnesota, and he's very good. I would say great, honestly, in his 98 season with Moss, Chris Carter, one of the greatest teams to ever win a Super Bowl. Had he won that Super Bowl, probably is in this Hall of Fame tier, and he's an iconic player. But I just don't think he was a Hall of Famer. That's just my opinion. I don't think he had a Hall of Fame career. I think he had a very good career. Hall of Very Good. He was more iconic, I think, than great to me. That's just how I see it. Maybe you're different, but that's just how I see it. Rich Gannon. short periods of time was really what this guy was, because he was completely a journeyman before. Like, he was not a good quarterback until he found his way to John Gruden and the Raiders. And, with John Gruden and the Raiders, his career took off. He made two All-Pro teams, won MVP in 2002, made it to the Super Bowl, was, of course, part of that famous tuck roll game. He was the quarterback on the other side. Was in that, like, early 2000s, late 90s period, like, after Favre's three MVPs, between Favre's last MVP and Peyton's first MVP, that, like, kind of 5-year stretch, Gannon might have been the best quarterback in the league, kind of like Phillip Rivers. But he just doesn't have the longevity that Rivers or other guys do. So that's why he's all very good for me. I think if he had been more consistent throughout the first couple, decade or so of his career, he'd certainly be in the Hall of Fame because he has fairly good accolades. 4 Pro Bowls, I think, 2 All-Pro teams, an MVP, a Super Bowl appearance. Pretty impressive, honestly. If he had done more, then he'd be, he'd be there. He just didn't, and ultimately that's kind of how I feel. But I just don't think he quite had a Hall of Fame career. Roman Gabriel had a Hall of Fame career. I think I'd put him about here ish. He was a Hall of Famer. He didn't have. He played a while ago, but he won an MVP. I believe he won a championship. I want to say he did. He had good era adjusted statistics. Outside of that, I can't really tell you much about Roman Gabriel, but he's a Hall of Famer. That's just kind of what he is. Boomer Esiason. All right, he is Hall of very good. He just is. His total statistics are impressive. His longevity statistics are impressive. Efficiency wise, he was solid. He wasn't never great. I think where Esiason just lets himself down is the team success. Like, the team success for him was just not there at all. So he can't be put in the Hall of Fame, as well as the fact that his statistics were, I think, a little bit more longevity than they were actually really good. And I don't think he was statistically one of the great quarterbacks of that era, the way even a Matt Ryan or Phillip Rivers were for their era, or Ken Anderson was, fellow Bengals quarterback. So I think Esiason's a tier below Anderson in terms of their careers, and that's how I see it. Warren Moon. I think he's the top of the Hall of Fame tier for me. I do. I don't consider him a legendary quarterback because he never really had an MVP level season. He was a lot. He thrived, honestly, a lot on longevity. That I think that really helps get him into the Hall of Fame. 9 Pro Bowls, anybody? But he's one of the greatest passers ever. He didn't win a lot, but his playoff statistics are fairly decent. And also, the other thing with Warren Moon is his teams weren't very good, so you cannot really kill him for that. He led the league in passing yards a couple times, I think. So Warren Moon, definitely, I think he's certainly in the Hall of Fame. I think he's like the top of the Hall of Fame tier. I think the cutoff for me is just lack of success. Jim Kelly, man, Hall of Fame or legendary for Jim Kelly? I think the cutoff here. The guys that I put in the legendary tier either won a Super Bowl or they were, like, you just can't not put them there. I think Jim Kelly, I think he's the very top of the Hall of Fame. He should have won an MVP in '91. I think the year Thurman Thomas won his MVP, I would have given that MVP to Chip Kelly. He should have won the Super Bowl against the Giants. That Scott Norwood miss still haunts Bills fans to this day. He was the leader of one of the greatest Super Bowl losers ever, or the greatest ever, four straight. But making four straight Super Bowls in its own right deserves a ton of respect. And he really, before the Super Bowl games at least, was pretty clutch in getting them there. I also think, his longevity wasn't great, so that does dock him. But, like, in terms of his statistics, you look at the guys that had the great statistics, right? Marino, Rodgers, Brees, Steve Young, these guys, Staubach. They played in climate-controlled environments, or non-climate controlled environments. Excuse me. They played in domes, warm weather stadiums. Kelly's played in potentially the worst stadium for that stuff in the NFL. Outside of Aaron Rodgers, obviously, who is just great. But Brees, Marino, Young, Staubach, their statistics were maybe slightly inflated off of that. Kelly wasn't. He had to go to New York. He had to go to Foxborough, and he had to play in Buffalo. So I think that's why maybe his statistics aren't as great as he was a player. But I know anybody, you speak to any player or fan at the time that watched him, they're putting him, they probably have him legendary. They speak very highly of him. He's a very well-respected player. And yeah, he's I think he's at the top of the Hall of Fame. I don't think he's quite in the legendary tier, but he's at the top of the Hall of Fame. Tom Brady, I left Tom Brady and Peyton Manning last for a reason. But Tom Brady, man, where should I put Tom Brady? Tom Brady's by far the greatest quarterback of all time. I thought he became the greatest of all time during Super Bowl 49. That comeback was brilliant, and that he checks every box. I'll put it to you like this, man. Tom Brady was like Peyton Manning in the regular season, and he was like Joe Montana in the playoffs. He maintained his level of play throughout. He has the iconic moments. A game-winning drive against the Rams to win his first Super Bowl. A game-winning drive against the Panthers in a great performance to win his second Super Bowl. A great performance against the Eagles to win his third Super Bowl. A great comeback against the Legion of Boom to win his fourth Super Bowl, to end a decade's worth of pain. In his fifth Super Bowl, the greatest comeback ever against the Falcons. In his sixth Super Bowl, there was the last drive to seal the game, that throw to Gronk. And then in Tampa Bay, just kind of rewriting the narratives about how he needed Belichick and how he was a system quarterback and all that kind of stuff. His statistics are maybe the greatest ever. It's with Brees and Peyton for that. He has 3 MVPs, could have more, had a couple seasons where he was close, didn't quite win it, but maybe should have, like this season. He has 5 Super Bowl MVPs, could have more as well. That MVP that went to Branch, I think, against the Eagles, you could say that Brady maybe should have won that MVP. I remember he was great in that game. His playoff record, I think, is 35-12, which is insane. So I know he has 35 playoff wins. Joe Montana, I think, is second with 16. So it's not even close between first and second. And Montana won 4 Super Bowls. He is a talent, consistently gets underrated, consistently gets disrespected. You can go to more than just the 7 rings argument. If Brady had 0 rings, none, he's in the Mount Rushmore still, man. Like, he had so many great seasons. 07, he was, we'll start before 07. So the first, 02, he leads the league in touchdowns. 03 to 06, he is, other than Manning, the best quarterback in the league, I would say, consistently in that top 3. Uh, 2013, he carries the worst receiving core of his career to the AFC title game. 2014, 2016, 2018, 2014, 2016, 2018 wins the Super Bowl. 2015 takes the second best defense of the last 15 years to basically the final play in their building with an unhealthy cast. 2017 throws for, I think, 500 yards and 3 touchdowns and a loss in the Super Bowl against the Eagles. 2019 wins 12 games with the worst supporting cast, maybe outside of 2013 from a receiver perspective he's had. 2020 wins the Super Bowl with throwing 40 touchdowns. 2021 leads the NFL in yards and touchdowns. So he's been great his entire career outside of maybe his first year, and even then he won the Super Bowl. So, that's still impressive. He's the GOAT. There's no debate. He's the greatest player ever. He's the greatest quarterback ever. He had a really strong arm. He still does. He was always one of the most accurate. He is, outside of maybe Peyton Manning, the smartest quarterback ever. He's routinely great at not taking sacks. So, yeah, and he just has that clutch factor, man. There's no quarterback I'd rather have to win me a game if my life was on the line, to get me a touchdown on a drive if my life was on the line, to get me a game-winning field goal if my life was on the line, than Tom Brady. I've seen it firsthand. So Tom Brady by far is the GOAT. And Peyton Manning, the last guy, of course, repping his jersey. Shout out Peyton. Mount Rushmore. I made a comparison between Peyton Manning and Joe Montana a couple months back. I came to the conclusion that I thought Peyton Manning was slightly greater than Joe Montana, and I stick by that. I certainly, you could put Peyton Manning second, third, or fourth, and I won't really bat an eye, as long as it's these three that are in that 2 to 4 slot, those 2 to 4 slots. But Peyton Manning, he won 5 MVPs, which is still the most ever. He still has the most fourth quarter comebacks and game-winning drives ever. He broke the records for yards and touchdowns in a single season in 2013. He retired with the yards and touchdowns marks. He, I think, tied with Brett Favre for most quarterback wins of all time. Brady's long since surpassed that, but I think he had that. Or I want to say he did. In the playoffs, we'll get to the playoffs, but in the regular season, I think he's still the greatest ever. But 7 All Pros, 14 Pro Bowls. This guy changed the quarterback position with how smart he was. He was the greatest sack avoider ever. Just in his intelligence, his ability to get the ball out quick, his ability to confuse defenses. You talk to Ray Lewis and Ed Reed about Peyton Manning. They speak about him like he was an assassin and like he was John Wick, and they're just happy that they made it out alive. That's how Ray Lewis and Ed Reed speak of this guy. So Peyton Manning, he's the greatest regular season quarterback ever. I think that's fair. In the playoffs, not quite. 14 playoff wins, I think I think it's third behind Brady and Montana. I want to say he made it to 4 Super Bowls, won 2. I made a video about Peyton Manning's playoff career, I think yesterday or the day before, I want to say, but it was some day like that. And I do think that narrative that he's a complete choker and he's a terrible postseason quarterback, all that stuff is a little bit exaggerated. He usually lost to very good teams, and he was usually the reason that the team was in the position there. And he, at times, he really did do his part in those games. He was just kind of unlucky. He wasn't Tom Brady or Montana in the playoffs, though, and I think that's got to hurt him. He had too many bad moments in the playoffs, man, but he had a ton of great moments, too, in the playoffs. And he still made 4 Super Bowls and won 2 in what was maybe the toughest conference ever, which is the 2000s AFC. So Yeah, Peyton Manning, we know about his greatness. He is in the Mount Rushmore tier. All right, guys, that is our quarterback tier list. As you can see, in the Hall of Very Good, Cam Newton, Matthew Stafford, Boomer Esiason, Rich Gannon, Randall Cunningham, Donovan McNabb, Tony Romo, Eli Manning. In the Hall of Fame, Philip Rivers, Joe Theismann, John Hadle, Roman Gabriel, Patrick Mahomes, Ken Anderson, Matt Ryan, Bob Greasy, Joe Namath, Warren Moon, Jim Kelly. Legendary, Sonny Jurgensen, Len Dawson, Dan Fouts, Bart Starr, Kurt Warner, Russell Wilson, Ken Stabler, Fran Tarkenton, Ben Roethlisberger, Troy Aikman, and Terry Bradshaw. In the Pantheon, Roger Staubach, Steve Young, Brett Favre, Drew Brees, John Elway, Aaron Rodgers, Dan Marino. In Mount Rushmore, Johnny Unitas, Joe Montana, and Peyton Manning. And the greatest of all time, Tom Brady. All right, guys, thank you for listening to this episode of the Laydown podcast. I hope you enjoyed. And if you want to see us do another tier list sometime on another podcast episode, just let us know in the comment section below. With all that said, thank you for watching this video. Make sure to like and subscribe. Check out mine and Lenny's social medias down below in the description. And God bless.